I always want to end while we're still having a good time, so we don't want to drag on too long. I've got about 3 more questions for you. Is that about fair? And we'll call it a night. So the first question sounds kind of lazy, and it is, but I've always tried to do this show, and what I have in mind is if I were going to be on a podcast talking about my book, how would I want to be interviewed? And something I would want, and I always want to extend this, is what's a question you maybe haven't been asked about during Darleen? What is something that you want esteemed audience to know about this book that maybe we haven't fleshed out in our conversation yet?
Well, I think ideally it would be a question that was like a little detail from the book that I hadn't, that I didn't necessarily know was coming, but since all the little details are in some ways tips of icebergs, probably there's something to say. So for instance, I could take the book and I could like open it randomly. Let's see what happens here. This might not be good. Boom. Okay. Oh yeah. So that was truly random. So I got to page 156, and they're looking at the I Can list, which is the studio questionnaire for actors applying to be extras at the studios. And there's all this list that says, which of the following abilities do you possess? Please check. I can ride a horse. I can swim. I can box. I can dance. I can drive a motor car. I can climb ropes. I can stand on my hands. I can wrestle. I can walk on a tightrope. I can play a musical instrument, space, to describe what instrument that is. I can dive from cliffs into a wild churning river. And so I guess like a little detail like that. And someone could say, okay, so why is that there? Did they really have lists like that? And they can say, yes, actually they did. So I changed around some of the items on the list. But that kind of list of general talents, can you swim? Can you box? Can you dance? Can you fence? Can you ride a horse? Was something that actually they did have for extras and people who wanted to work for a movie studio in the teams. Well, I have it here because I have someone who's going to hide in plain sight by becoming an extra in a film.
I was going to say one of the questions on there should be, have you filled out your last will and testament? If not, let's make sure we get that done before the camera starts rolling.
Right, exactly.
Lord knows what's going to happen.
After you dive into the churning river. And there are a lot of testimonials from those days about how hard it was to be an actor. I mean, not only were you asked to do all sorts of difficult things, but the pay was terrible. And often you had to supply your own costumes, as well as, paying for your ferry to get across the river from New York, where you probably lived, to Fort Lee, where the studio was, and so on. So it wasn't a huge money-making enterprise for most of the people in it.
Unfortunately, that's completely different now. Moving on.
Right. Same.
And Ann Nesbet, have you ever seen a flying saucer, and do you believe in them?
So I have not personally seen a flying saucer. Every time I have looked up while backpacking and seen something that I thought must be a supernova, it has turned out to be a plane. So, and as far as believing in them, I don't know what I would be being asked to believe exactly. I do think that there must be intelligent life in the universe. I really doubt that it's hanging around here yet. But somewhere out there is or has been some, way, some creature living in a completely different way than we can even imagine. I mean, I think that's the one thing about life in this universe. You keep being shown that everything is just infinitely more surprising and strange than you could possibly have dreamed up.
Excellent answer. And then my last question for you is always some variation of, for all the authors listening, if there was one or two bits of information you could go back and give yourself at the start of your writing career that would have made things easier for you or better for you, in the hopes of making things easier or better for our esteemed audience, what would you go back and tell yourself?
I would try to send a hopeful message saying, chin up. You should just start writing. Take it seriously. Go ahead. It's all right to take it seriously. It matters. And start doing that earlier. That would be fine. And don't be thinking that the only serious way to live is by not writing, because you won't be happy that way. And I think it's important to use the gifts and talents that you have, and also to follow your heart in some things. So I think I would try to be encouraging of my younger self, because I think I waited a little bit longer than I needed to give it the kind of attention that I think it deserved. And then the other thing I would say is that to be good, a book does not have to be infinitely long. When I was first starting, I did think that the longer the better, and that was just because that was what I liked. I liked a book that was really long. I figured, if I were going to buy a book at a bookstore, I'd like to have a nice, big, large one so that, it would last for a few days, right? But that turns out not to be the ticket to a successful publishing career.
Sometimes you're just reading a long book, and the pain of reading a bad book is just extended.